methods alluded to come, strictly speaking, under the head of space clairvoyance on the astral plane, and therefore form a part of this lesson. The first of these methods consists of what we have described as simple clairvoyance, on an increased scale, by reason of the development of the faculty of focusing upon far distant objects and bringing them to view by means of what occultists know as the astral tube, which will be described in the following paragraphs. The second method consists in projecting the astral body, consciously or unconsciously, and practically observing the scene on the spot through the astral vision. This method will also be described a little later on in this lesson. We have described the astral light rays emanating from all objects by means of which the astral vision becomes possible. And under the head of simple clairvoyance, we have told you how the clairvoyant may observe nearby objects through his astral vision, just as he may through his physical sight. The astral light rays being used in the one case, just as are the ordinary light rays in the other. But just as one is unable to perceive a far removed object through his ordinary physical vision, although the light rays are not interrupted, so is the simple clairvoyant unable to see far removed objects by means of his astral vision, although the astral light rays are uninterrupted. On the physical plane, man, in order to see things beyond his normal vision, must make use of the telescope. Likewise, on the astral plane, he must call into operation some assistance to the simple astral vision in order to receive a clear impression of things far off. This assistance, however, comes from within his own astral organism and consists of a peculiar astral faculty which acts as the lens of a telescope and magnifies the rays received from afar, rendering them sufficiently large enough to be distinguished by the mind. This power is telescopic in effect, although it is really by a variation of that microscopic faculty noted under the head of simple clairvoyance. This telescopic faculty varies very much in physics, some being able to see but a few miles, while others receive impressions just as easily from all parts of the Earth, and a few have been able to occasionally perceive scenes on other planets. This telescopic astral vision is usually operated in connection with what occultists have called the astral telescope, which is akin to the astral telegraph, astral current, etc., all of which are but variations of the astral tube. The astral tube is caused by the forming of a thought current on the astral plane, held together by a strong supply of prana projected along with the thought, which current renders far easier the passage of astral vibrations of all kinds, whether they be telepathic thought vibrations, astral light vibrations, or astral sound vibrations. It is the bringing of the observer and the observed, the projector and the recipient, or the two persons in harmony, into a closer condition of rapport. The astral tube is the means whereby quite a variety of psychic phenomena is made possible. In the case of astral telescopic vision or space clairvoyance, the clairvoyant, either consciously or unconsciously, sets up an astral tube connecting him with the distant scene. The astral light vibrations reach him more easily by this method, and the outside impressions are inhibited or shut out, so that the mind receives only the impressions from the point focused upon. These impressions reach the clairvoyant and are magnified by his telescopic faculty, and are then plainly perceived by his astral vision. This telescopic faculty, remember, acts merely as the lens through which the astral light rays pass, and by which they are magnified to a size sufficiently large enough to be distinguished by the astral vision, just as the ordinary light rays are magnified for the ordinary vision by the lens of a telescope. The analogy is a very close one, and it will help you to form a clear mental idea of the process. The astral tube is usually formed by the will of the clairvoyant, or by his strong desire, which has almost as much force. At times, however, the conditions being favorable, any idle thought may cause the erection of the astral current, and the clairvoyant will see scenes unthought of, or even unknown to him. The idle thought may have formed a connection with other psychic currents, or may have been attracted in certain directions by any of 1,001 psychic causes under the law of attraction and association. But the will of the operator is usually sufficient to shut out the careless adjustments and to establish a speedy connection with the desired person or place. Many persons have this faculty well under control. Others find it coming and going spontaneously. Others are devoid of it, except under mesmeric influence, etc. Many have found the crystal ball or a similar object an easy means of creating the astral tube. the crystal being used as a sort of starting point. Crystal gazing is merely space clairvoyance by use of the astral tube, the scenes perceived by the observer being seen by this means. We have space merely to state the general principles of this great subject in order to give the student an intelligent idea of the several forms of psychic phenomena. We regret that we have not the opportunity to relate the interesting instances of clairvoyant power which have been recorded by eminent writers on this subject, and which are all attested from a scientific point of view. However, we are not starting to prove the existence of clairvoyance to you. We must assume that you know it to be a fact, or are at least not antagonistic to the idea. Our space must be devoted to a brief description and explanation of this phenomenon, rather than to any attempt to prove its reality to skeptics. It is a matter which, after all, every man must prove to his own satisfaction by his own experience, and which no outside proof will establish. The second method of seeing things far removed from us by space consists in the projecting of the astral body, consciously or unconsciously, and practically observing the scene on the spot by means of the astral vision. This is a more difficult and rarer method than the ordinary astral tube method just described. Although many persons travel in the astral and perceive senses which they think are seen in a dream or in the mind's eye. We have described the astral body in a previous lesson. It is possible for one to project their astral body or travel in their astral body to any point within the limits of this planet, although very few people are conscious of their ability to so travel, and considerable practice and caution is necessary for the beginner. Once on the spot, the astral traveler may see what is going on around him, and is not confined to the small scene to which the psychic using the astral tube is restricted. His astral body follows his desires or will and goes where it is ordered. The trained occultist merely wishes to be at a certain place, and his astral body travels there with the rapidity of light, or even more rapidly. Of course, the untrained occultist has no such degree of control over his astral body, and is more or less clumsy in his management of it. People often travel in their astral body in their sleep. A smaller number travel unconsciously in their waking moments, and a few have acquired the knowledge enabling them to travel consciously and at will in their waking moments. The astral body is always connected with the physical body by a thin, silk-like astral thread, and the communication between the two is maintained. We will have more to say on the subject of the astral body in our 10th lesson, which treats of the astral plane. We merely allude to it here in order to explain that what is called clairvoyance is sometimes accomplished by its aid, although it is a higher form of psychic power than the other forms of clairvoyance mentioned by us so far. Past time clairvoyance. Time clairvoyance, so far as regards the sensing of past events, is not a rare faculty among advanced occultists. In fact, it may be termed a common one among such people. And the same faculty, imperfectly manifested, is found among many ordinary psychics who are not acquainted with the nature of their power. Among this last mentioned class of people, time clairvoyance is more or less unsatisfactory because it's imperfect and misleading, from causes which will be seen presently. The statement that one may see past events and scenes, even by astral vision, will readily be seen to require an entirely different explanation from that given of simple and space clairvoyance. For in the latter cases, the clairvoyant sees that which is actually occurring somewhere at the time it is seen, or at least a few seconds previous. Whereas in the latter case, the clairvoyant sees something which has occurred, perhaps ages ago, and after apparently all records of it have perished. Ah, that is just the explanation. Apparently perished. Occultists know that nothing ever perishes, and that there are in existence on the higher planes of matter imperishable and unalterable records of every scene, act, thought, and thing that ever existed or occurred. These Akashic records are not on the astral plane, but are on a plane far above it. But they are mirrored on the astral plane, just as the sky and clouds are reflected in the body of the lake, and the observer who cannot see the sky itself may see its counterpart in the water. And just as his vision may be distorted by the ripples and waves on the water, so may the astral vision of these records of the past become distorted and imperfect impressions by reason of the disturbances in the astral light. Occultists for ages have used water as a symbol of the astral light. Do you see why? These Akashic records contain the memory of all that has passed, and he who has access to them may read the past as he may a book, but only the most advanced intelligences have free access to these records, or rather have the power to read them. But many have acquired a greater or lesser degree of power, which enables them to read more or less plainly from the reflections of the records in the astral plane. Those who have developed time clairvoyance are able to see these reflections of the records as scenes actually occurring before them, just as one hears from the phonograph the voices of people long since passed out of the body, and just as others may listen to our voices centuries hence. It is impossible to explain to beginners the nature of these records. We have no words to explain them. Even we who write these words have but a partial understanding of the inner mystery of the Akashic records. Then how may we make ourselves plain to those who are still further back on the path than are we? We can think of but one illustration, and that an imperfect one. In the brain of every human being, there are millions of cells, each containing the records of some past event or thought or action. We cannot find these records by the microscope or chemical test, and yet they are there and may be used. The memory of every act, thought, and deed remains during life in the brain, although its owner may not always be able to call it up in recollection. Can you grasp the idea of the Akashic record from this illustration? In the great memory of the universe are registered and stored away the records of all that has gone before. Those who have access to the records may read, and those who are able to see even the astral reflection of the records may read with greater or less accuracy and skill. This is the best we can offer you in the way of explaining an unexplainable matter. Those who are ready for the truth hidden in these words will see a glimpse of it. The others must wait until they are ready. Future time clairvoyance. Time clairvoyance, so far as seership or the seeing into the future is concerned, is even still more difficult of a simple explanation. We shall not attempt it, except to say that in the astral light there are to be found faint and imperfect reflections, the workings of the great law of cause and effect. Some few have the power of a closer viewpoint of the things causing these shadows or reflections, while more have a degree of psychic power, enabling them to see with their astral vision these poor reflections, distorted and uncertain by reason of the waves and ripples on the body of the lake of the astral light. There are higher planes of power whereby a few in each age have been able to see partially into the future, but such powers are far above the poor astral plane faculties, which, although quite wonderful to the untrained occultist, are not so highly viewed by those who have progressed well along the path. We almost regret to be compelled to pass over this part of the subject in so few words, and with a mere hint of even the small particle of truth vouchsafed to even the advanced seeker of the way. But we know full well that we will all receive the light needed by them, just the moment they are ready. Not one moment later, not one moment sooner. All that can be done is for us to drop a word here, a hint there, a planting of the seed. May the harvest come soon and be a rich one. Clairaudience. Clairaudience is the hearing on the astral plane by means of the astral senses. Nearly all that we have said about clairvoyance is equally true of clairaudience, the only difference being that a different astral organ is used. Simple clairaudience is similar to simple clairvoyance. Space clairaudience is akin to space clairvoyance. Past-time clairaudience is similar to past-time clairvoyance. Even future-time clairvoyance has a shadow of resemblance in the clairaudient phenomena. The only difference between the two astral manifestations is that they are experienced through two different astral senses. Some clairvoyants are also clairaudients, while others lack the latter power. On the other hand, some hear clairaudiently, but are unable to see the astral light. On the whole, clairaudience is a somewhat rarer manifestation than is clairvoyance. Psychometry. Just as we sometimes recall an apparently forgotten thing by seeing something which is associated with that thing in our memory, so may we sometimes be able to open up the astral reflection of the Akashic records of some particular scene or event by touching some material associated with the event or scene. There seems to be almost an affinity between a bit of matter and the particular portion of the Akashic records containing the past history of the thing in question. A bit of metal or stone or cloth or hair will open up the psychic vision of the things previously associated with it in the past. Or, on the other hand, we may bring ourselves in rapport with persons now living by means of a particle of their clothing, hair, or articles formerly carried by them. The rapport condition thus established, enabling us to more easily set up the astral tube. Psychometry is merely one or more forms of clairvoyance brought into operation by means of some connecting link between person or things, or some object connected with these persons or things. It is not a distinct class of psychic phenomena, but is merely a variation of the other classes, sometimes combining several classes of clairvoyance in its manifestation. How to develop psychic powers? We are often asked the question, which is probably in the minds of the majority of our students, at least those who have not yet manifested any marked exhibition of psychic power. How can one develop the psychic power which is latent within him? There are many methods of such development, a few of which are desirable, many of which are undesirable, and some which are positively harmful. Among the harmful methods are those used among certain savage races, and which obtain even among misguided ones of our own race. We allude to such objectionable practices as the use of stupefying drugs, whirling dances, voodoo practices, repulsive rites of the black magicians, and other similar practices which we do not consider it wisdom to even mention. These practices aim to produce an abnormal condition, similar to intoxication, and which, like intoxication and drug habits, only result in physical and psychical ruin. Those indulging in them do, it is true, develop a low order of psychic or astral power, but they invariably attract to themselves an undesirable class of astral entities and often open themselves up to the influence of a low order of intelligences, which wise men carefully avoid and refuse to entertain. We will do no more than utter a warning against these practices and their results. Our work is intended to elevate our students, not to drag them down to the level of the black magicians. Other practices, more or less undesirable, although not absolutely harmful in the sense that we speak of the last mentioned ones, are more or less common among both the Hindus of a certain class and the Western peoples. We allude to methods of self-hypnotization and of hypnotization by others in order to produce or induce a psychic condition in which the person is entitled to catch glimpses of the astral world, gazing at some bright object until a trance-like condition is induced, or the repetition of some monotonous formula until a drowsy condition is produced, are among the methods of this class. In the same class, we place the ordinary process of hypnotism by others for the same purpose. There is, of course, a higher form of mesmerism known to occultists, which is on an entirely different plane. But occultists are reluctant to use the same, except in certain cases where good may result, and such methods are not known to the ordinary operator, who, alas too, often is a person of imperfect occult knowledge and training, and of a low degree of moral character. We caution our students against allowing themselves to be experimented with in this manner. There are two methods of psychic development practiced by the yogis, which we will mention here. The first and highest is the development of psychic powers by first developing the spiritual faculties and nature, when the psychic powers may be used with intelligence and power without any special training, the higher attainment carrying with it the lower. In other words, the yogi bent on spiritual attainment contents himself with merely an intellectual acquaintance with psychic power in passing on, and then after he has acquired the higher spiritual knowledge and development, he returns and uses the tools ready at his hand, the use of which he now understands. In the 14th lesson of this series, we will point out the way of this development. The lesson will be entirely devoted to pointing out the way to spiritual attainment. There is, however, another way whereby some students of the yogi philosophy develop psychic powers in themselves, preferring to gain this knowledge by experiment and experience before passing on to the spiritual plane. We have no fault to find with this course, providing the student does not regard psychic power as the end of attainment, and providing he always is inspired with worthy motives and does not allow the interest of the astral plane to divert him from the main object, spiritual development. Some of the yogi students follow the plan of first mastering the body by the mind, and then mastering the instinctive mind by the intellect under the direction of the will. The first steps of the mastery of the body have been spoken of by us in Science of Breath, and will be more clearly brought out and added to in our forthcoming book, Hatha Yoga. The mental control forms a subject in itself, and we trust to find time to write a little manual on the subject sometime during the present year. If the student wishes to experiment a little for himself, we suggest that he acquire self-control and practice concentration in the silence. Many of you have already had exhibitions of psychic power, and you may practice along the lines corresponding to the manifestations you have already had. If it be telepathy, practice with some of your friends and note the results. A little practice will work wonders for you. If it be clairvoyance, you may practice with a crystal or a glass of clear water to assist in concentrating and to form the beginning of the astral tube. If it be psychometry, practice by picking up some object, such as a pebble, a coin, a key, etc. Sit quietly, taking note of the fleeting impressions which at first will come but dimly before your mind. The description of the different classes of phenomena mentioned in this lesson will suggest methods and exercises for you. But do not allow yourself to be carried away by psychic practices. They are interesting and instructive, but they are not essential things at this stage of development. Keep your mind fixed always on the goal, the end to be attained, the development of the real self, the realization of the I am within you, and the still higher realization of your oneness with all. Peace be to thee, student. You have our loving thought and wishes for your welfare. If you ever feel the need of our sympathy and mental help, call for it in the great silence, and we will respond. Mantram and meditation. A mantram is a word, phrase, or verse used by the Eastern people in order to concentrate upon an idea and to let it sink deep into the mind. The mantram given each month should be committed to memory and repeated often, letting the mind dwell upon its meaning and meditate upon its truth. It will help the mind to unfold and give the student new light upon the subject. The mantram given in each lesson is intended for use until the next lesson reaches the student, and is not intended for any special month, nor is it in the nature of cooperative work as is the circle work. It is for individual work on the part of the student. The mantram for use until the next lesson reaches you is taken from that wonderful little book, Light on the Path, and it is as follows. Before the eyes can see, they must be incapable of tears. Before the ear can hear, it must have lost its sensitiveness. Before the voice can speak in the presence of the masters, it must have lost the power to wound. These words are capable of a number of meanings, each adapted to the wants of different people in various stages of development. They have their psychic meaning, their intellectual meaning, and their spiritual meaning. We take for our meditation this month one of the many meanings. Let us take it into the silence with us. Our eyes must be incapable of the tears of wounded pride, unkind criticisms, unmerited abuse, unfriendly remarks, the little annoyances of everyday life, the failures and disappointments of everyday existence, before we can see clearly the great spiritual truths. Let us endeavor to rise by degrees above these incidents of personality and strive to realize our individuality, the I am, which is above the annoyances of personality, and to learn that these things cannot hurt the real self, and that they will be washed from the sands of time by the ocean of eternity. Likewise, our ear must lose its sensitiveness to the unpleasant incidents of the personality, above alluded to as causing tears, before it can hear the truth clearly and free from the jarring noises of the outward strife of personality. One must grow to be able to hear these things and yet smile, secure in the knowledge of his soul and its powers and destiny. Before the voice can speak to those high in the order of life and spiritual intelligence, it must have long since forgotten how to wound others by unkind words, petty spite, unworthy speech. The advanced man does not hesitate to speak the truth even when it is not pleasant, if it seems right to do so. But he speaks in the tone of a loving brother, who does not criticize, but merely feels the other's pain and wishes to remove its cause. Such a one has risen above the desire to talk back, to cut another by unkind and spiteful remarks, or to get even by saying in effect, "You're another." These things must be cast aside like a worn-out cloak. The advanced man needs them not. Take these thoughts with you into the silence, and let the truth sink into your mind, that it may take root, grow, blossom, and bear fruit.
highest frequencies, all animal totems, elementals of fire, air, water, and earth, all divine beings of light, love, and ascension, named and unnamed, to activate the cells within my being who are your counterparts with the unified power of the One. I decree my highest good always operating in this now. I decree grace and mercy always operating in this now. I invoke, decree, and dream awake the full truth and reality of ascension in this now. I invoke and dream awake with every breath that I breathe the violet fire transmuting my whole being. I invoke and dream awake the full current of ascension in every cell of my being. I am ascended. I invoke and dream awake expanded God consciousness, fully realized in me as unlimited abundance, fulfilling my every need and desire. I invoke and dream awake the ending of procrastination, tiredness, blockages, obstacles, and unhealthy belief systems. I decree immediate abundance in my life. I invoke and dream awake my liberation from all karmic debt. I am infinite opulence. I invoke and dream awake my personal empowerment in every instant that anyone is impacted by my being and creations. I invoke and dream awake the infinite empowerment of my sexual, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and financial relationship with life. I invoke and dream awake sacred sexuality, erotic innocence, and always express the sacredness of sexual force for pleasure, creativity, and healing. I invoke and dream awake world universal healing from all sexual woundedness and shame. I invoke and dream awake worldwide release of all manipulating forces and beings who would control humanity past, present, and future. I invoke the angels and ascended masters to realign and heal all misused energy, to include the full restructuring of our DNA. I invoke and dream awake the transmutation of all negative and judgmental projections. I invoke and dream awake my constant ability to be centered and balanced in my psychic perceptions and empathic nature. All overwhelming psychic energies are released by me automatically, easily, effortlessly. I am empowered by everything. I invoke and dream awake my lucid dreaming each night I sleep and total remembering when I awake. I invoke and dream awake my infinite harmony with God, Goddess I am. I invoke and dream awake the full expression of my miraculous healing power. My life is a continuous stream of miracles. I invoke and dream awake my infinite ability and willingness to receive all life's blessings. I invoke and dream awake a constant attitude of gratitude for my whole life, all my accomplishments and blessings, including the same for the universe at large. I invoke and dream awake the full blessings of God, Goddess, the ascended masters, angels, guides, and beings of light to bless this earth. I invoke and dream awake almighty decrees, invocations, and prayers I have released to the universe and opened myself to God's response, support, and love in my highest good. I invoke and dream awake the release of all past, present, and future lifetimes of decrees and vows which would bind me to limitation, lack, density, and anything not of ascension in this now. I invoke and dream awake the full reclaiming of my eternal self as powerful, loving, and fully aligned in abundant God consciousness. I invoke and dream awake the total dissolving of all manipulating forces which would bind this earth plane in fear. I invoke and dream awake the influence of the ascended master realm and angels to intercede and raise the vibrations higher to bring darkness into the light, raising the frequency of love and God consciousness on planet Earth in this now. I invoke and dream awake the ascension of planet Earth in this now.